Hello, welcome back to the channel. So what I thought I would do today is a showcase for my Japanese army for bolt action. Show off some of the units and the paint schemes, talk about what I've done for compositions, and generally show off the range. I've got most of the range painted up. So what we have in front of us on the turntable, that is a 15-man Japanese infantry squad. Let's zoom out a bit. So what you can see there is a basic infantry squad. We have a light machine gunner. We also have a sergeant with a submachine gun. What I like about the Japanese is there's a lot of movement aggression model in it. Most of the units hunch forward, advancing and attacking. There was one day I was visiting the Warlord game store. John Stallard was leaving. I might have told you this story before. Kind of recognised me. Actually took me around the studio just as the Japanese had been done. And he said they were a lovely set of models, and I agreed and went out and did a Japanese army to face off against my Chindits. So what do you get with the Japanese army? So a lot of the Japanese army is to do with being fanatics. Everybody's a fanatic, to do with pin markers and ignoring pin markers, and being able to banzai charge, which is take a run or a charge order towards the enemy and make contact with them. And some other rules there about ambush tactics and what you can do with Kampatai. So the basic infantry unit that we have in front of us starts out at 7 men and can go an additional 8, which would take us to 15. Now, the Japanese army had 3 types of infantry unit: Type A, Type B, and Type C. Type A was for fighting in China, and that had 15 men a unit. I think Type B was Pacific and Burma as an aggressive fighting force, and that was 13 men per unit. And Type C was garrison units. So one of the things you will find when you're doing a Japanese army is, like I say, the bulk of the troops are in quite an aggressive moving forward pose. You see, like this guy here, kind of running forward and shooting. Whereas some of the models are laid down or kneeling. So if I spin that round. So what I generally do is pull my kneeling squads and laid down squads together, and I generally pop them together. So they form almost like a more static force unit in the force, as opposed to the guys which are stood up charging aggressively. Painting the Japanese is actually dead easy. I've used, as Andrew does from Games Workshop, I've put brown on the weapon, shaded it, and then did a bit of highlighting. Really quick and simple, really effective. So that's your basic Japanese infantry units. The other thing you're going to get are knee mortars. So Japanese units can get knee mortars. Now these are for the grenadier squads, and you can have up to 3 of those in a unit. And grenadier squads can actually go up to about 18 men. So what you're throwing in there is some light mortars, which I don't think I've seen a unit like that in bolt action. It's certainly from reading sort of Commando Book for Boys and my war comics in the 80s, the Japanese machine guns and the knee mortars are kind of iconic Japanese looks for me. I've not used a grenadier squad, but since I had the spare kneeling guys with the mortars, I thought I had to make it. Now another type of infantry unit, which I'm going to spin around in a minute, is the bamboo units. And these are pretty fearsome. Combat in bolt action can be very deadly. So when you've got a unit which is ignoring pin markers and is able to charge enemy units, it's pretty fearsome. So I'll spin this round. Now I actually have 3 boxes. So what I've done with my Japanese force, is I've got a standard infantry force I can use in China, or I'm thinking the forward beaches, the initial part of a campaign. Then I have enough of these to do a platoon of them, and this is a last ditch troops. So these wouldn't be your frontline forces in China or Burma. These are when it gets desperate, the last ditch defenders of an island. So what traditionally would happen is the American Navy would come and isolate an island, land the Marines, and the Marines would grind their way across the island. The Japanese weren't getting any reinforcements or supplies. Towards the end, when it looked hopeless for the Japanese, often they would engage in a banzai charge. And this is what these guys represent. They're out of weapons, out of bullets. They've sharpened some bamboo sticks and went for it. One of the things I did when I was painting these guys is originally I was going to leave the bamboo sticks plain coloured, and I kept looking at pictures of them and thought, let's go for it. So as you can see, I've just used a bit of brown ink painted around it, just to give it that wee look. And if you can as well, oh, it's a wee knob on the end as well, make it look hollow. One of the models I really liked in a slightly different range, this is the officer from the Marines, and I specifically picked up that box. So I picked it up so I could do a platoon of Marines, but also I just love the look of this model, and he looks like the perfect officer to be commanding some troops engaged on a banzai mission, a last ditch defense of an island. Now, a few other interesting units the Japanese can get, and these are the Lunge Mines. So it is basically an anti-tank mine strapped to the front of a long pole. And these are small units of anti-tank troops able to run out and engage what they need to engage. Now, with the ambush orders, special rules for the Japanese and infiltrating and stuff, I decided to do some of these guys knelt down and kind of hiding in the brush, as well as stood up and charging. Just a bit different. Again, we've only played a couple of games in the Pacific. I do plan to do a load more, because I do have my Marines finished and I have my Burma troops finished. But that is my Lunge Mines. Suicide anti-tank troops. And ubiquitous snipers. And nothing says grim jungle warfare like snipers. And again, I've just not even put a scoped rifle on this guy. Knelt down. Repair binoculars for the spotters, obviously pointing out his targets. And I've experimented a bit with putting some of the base material on the helmet as well. Something a bit different, something I've not done before. I won't do loads of it, but I do quite like the effect for the sniper team there. And it also shows for me it's a different unit and different type of snipers. Then comes to my general officers. Or command group. So spin this round. Flags. Who doesn't like flags? So nice wee flag there. Flag banner. So that's also the thing that makes the Lunge Mines. Officers charging with the sword out. And a wee bugler there. But it wouldn't be a bot action army without some support weapons and support kits. Now I have recently bought the metal support box for the mortar, and I can do some extra command out of that. They are going to be, they're in the painting schedule, but I do have a lot on the painting schedule at the moment. So what I've done here, machine gun, again something, I've been making some bunkers for the Pacific War, and I'm going to show off my terrain for the Pacific War. So I plan to be able to do 3 battles. So marine landing, opposed landing, some sort of jungle fighting, and then sort of a last ditch defense, and see how the different armies fight. So yeah, machine guns, always good. Now this is one of my first artillery pieces I've done for bolt action. So I've put some of the crew modelled on the base, some of the crew loose by it so we can take it off. So simple sticks around it. Quite a grimy artillery piece, as you can see. Pacific campaign was horrendous and mucky. So lots of grime, lots of muck everywhere. I was pretty pleased with this. If I was to do it again, I'd maybe add a bit more, maybe some really put dirt around it. And finally, got some spotters as well. Finally, I've tank spotters and camper tie. So nice little tank, dead easy to do, just something simple. It always amazes me how much armour was actually in the Pacific. Most of the islands had some sort of armour on. It wasn't a massive, you didn't have the big tank battles you had in the desert or Northwest Europe or certainly Russia, but there was enough there. So a little Japanese tank. It's quite fun to do. And one of the games we had was that versus the Sherman, which you'll see in my Marine video. And they were just stood with the guns bouncing shells off each other for most of the game. Then finally a few more bits of support. I've got this guy here, I'm representing camper tie, and again a few different spotters as required, whether I use it for sort of mortars or air support or more than likely artillery support. So I always do my bolt action armies to have at least 3 infantry units. Now with the Japanese, it basically is 3 infantry units because I've done them the full size 15, but I can also do them as 13 for the theatre. I do plan on actually making a Chinese army. I've been reading a lot about the warfare in China before the outbreak of war between the Western Allies and America versus Japan. And I think between the World War I Germans and maybe some Boxer Rebellion miniatures that are coming out from War Games Atlantic, I might be able to pull off some really interesting looking Chinese stuff. But anyway, that's my army. I love bolt action armies, dead quick to paint and put together. Great wargaming time at the moment. I know I certainly am. There's so much stuff happening. I look forward to chatting to you and talking to you again in my next video. Okay, so that's goodbye for now. Goodbye.